Up next on Triangulation, we're diving into technology, yes, but also a little bit of music. Fellow TWiT Jeff Brockman is next.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is Triangulation episode 427, recorded Friday, December 20th for December 27th, 2019. Jeff Brockman. It's time for Triangulation. I'm Jason Howell, sitting in the hot seat today, and I have to tell you, like we talk a lot on this show with people who are, movers, shakers in the technology sphere. Today's guest is close to home, yes, in technology, but possibly even more in something that I'm passionate about, and that's music. Guest today is Jeff Brockman, sitting right next to me, someone who I also happen to work with here at TWiT.
How you doing, Jason?
Good
seeing you.
It's awesome to have the ability to do this. Jeff is, for folks who aren't aware or maybe are, Jeff works behind the scenes. He's one of the engineers here. Started about 6 months ago-ish, yes. Right around there, right?
May 28th.
Okay. And came to the studio with a large pedigree in the music industry, which I think I was aware of. I mean, I was definitely aware of over the past months, but until a conversation that you and I had very recently, I hadn't been truly aware of the depth to which you were ingrained in the music industry in the 90s and beyond. And when I started checking out your music and checking out everything that you were involved with, I was like, holy cow, like this guy is like ridiculously talented and amazing, on top of being just a really nice, warm presence to be around. You're just really talented. You're a drummer, and we're going to talk all about your music experience. Also, how that kind of intertwines with technology, because as everyone knows, this is a technology network, it's a technology podcast, Triangulation. But I think your perspective is unique because, like I could safely say that everybody has an association with music from a very passive listener perspective. You've worked in that industry.
Yes.
You know how the machine, as it were, operates.
Yes. And it's changed over the years.
It has. So
yeah.
I'm really curious to kind of get your take on that, because you were there mid 90s and beyond. So you were truly there in the era of CD.
Yeah.
And
analog.
Analog.
Yeah. 2-inch tape.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Analog in the recording studios, and watching it transition to where it is now. Everything's digital. We were talking right before the show started how music is just, it's so much more of a commodity now. Like it's everywhere, and it's too easy almost.
Instantaneous.
Yeah.
Like Google, find my song. It's like, what?
Like, how do you feel about that? Like, I know for myself, I loved back in the day walking into a record store or a music store and not knowing what I was going to walk out with. And then when I did, I only had enough money to buy one CD or one tape or whatever. And like, that was my precious. I listened to that on repeat forever and ever and ever.
Same thing.
Yeah.
I would go to Warehouse Records or Tower Records, and I'd go through there and I'd see these nice big album covers, and I'd see something interesting that I'd never heard of. Like, for example, UFO, the band UFO. I go, wow, that sounds cool, UFO,
Neat.
And I put it in my car, and it's just awesome, it's just amazing. And yeah, same thing. That's how I used to discover music.
Yeah.
Going to the music store, going through the files, or seeing the posters on the wall. There was no internet,
Yeah.
And then also FM radio. So FM radio, you always discover stuff on that and then go search it out. But yeah, the transition
even that has changed.
Yeah, the transition from analog to digital was a process because it went to digital tape first. So you were still using tape, So when it started transitioning, we were using digital tape, and transitioned to that. And they had this magic thing called the ADAT, and that recorded each ADAT machine would record 8 tracks of digital audio, and you could link up to 16 machines together for 128 tracks of digital audio. And then you had a thing called the BRC, big remote control, and that would synchronize all 16 ADATs, and you'd have 128 tracks and going into your mixing board and mixing. So
and it worked flawlessly every single time, right? I say that
well,
in jest.
you're still dealing with
I
tape
know
that
that. Yeah, I
stretches
know that it
and breaks and stuff.
had its issues.
But the machines and the invention was really, the technology was really cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it was amazing.
It was neat that you could.
And the thing is, too, then you could start sending these digital tapes out to people. So, pre-internet, but now you could send tapes out because, you couldn't send 2-inch tapes around. I mean, people did it, but
not very easy.
Yeah,
not very
But the
easily.
ADATs were really hard. I mean, really easy to put in a FedEx box and send to somebody. They could record their tracks, clone it because it's digital. So you just make a clone, send that back to a studio, and they'd mix it. And we did that a lot on various projects. But
now, this is super random and totally out of nowhere, but I remember back in the day when CDs started coming on the scene, the rumor was that if you took a green Sharpie to the edge of the CD, it would improve the fidelity of the CD, which is totally ridiculous.
I've never heard that one.
Okay, good. All right, good. Then you've passed the test.
Yeah. Thank you.
I did, and I fell for it. I remember my first batch of CDs, like probably 12 or 13 CDs when I first got a CD player. They all had green around the edges because I had heard that that's what you do on compact disc to improve the sound.
There you go.
What did I know other than what my friends were telling me? So I should say the band that we're going to talk about, and we'll get to it in a bit, that you really spearheaded is a band called Cairo.
Yes.
And folks in the progressive rock genre, fans of the progressive rock, are going to be familiar with this style of music, right? Like,
absolutely.
Very complex. Oh, this is you drumming right here. On your setup, which we're also going to talk about, your virtual live studio setup. But I mean, the music of Cairo that I've checked out and dove into is just so incredibly complex. And so when I listened and watched, I was like literally blown away by your craftsmanship, your ability to play drums just as amazingly as you do in these videos. Just the complexity of the melodic material. And all this was basically written in the start by you and then translated over to the members of your band ultimately.
Exactly, yeah. So I came up with a bunch of songs. And actually, I composed it all on MIDI keyboards. I really got into MIDI.
Yeah.
And I completely understood it and how it worked, and I embraced it. And I had MIDI sequencers, MIDI drum machines, and all kinds of MIDI keyboards. I just started writing. I was always a drummer in a band.
Okay.
And one year, I just got tired of being the drummer because nobody considered the drummer a writer.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Although I will say from my own experience in bands, it was always hard to find a drummer. So drummers were definitely needed.
Yeah.
But then because, I don't know if it's literally because the drums are usually in the back of the stage behind everybody else that's in the front, but then the drums are kind of like, they're there, but the drummer doesn't get as much of the attention.
Yeah, they're the clock.
Yeah,
they're supposed to just be quiet and you're the clock,
Right.
But look, I'm into melody and stuff, and that came from my early childhood. My parents always had music playing in the house, and the melody was always in my head, and I always wanted to compose. And I could pick up guitars and just naturally play, and then when I'd sit down in front of pianos, I could figure out notes. And
so you had an ear for music.
Yeah,
from
I just
from
took
a
my
young age.
tax return one year, and I bought a sequencer, a drum machine, and a keyboard. From that point on, I just started writing.
Nice.
And within the first 2 weeks, I had a couple songs, and I had those on a 4-track cassette recorder, because again, no digital.
Yeah. Oh, I had one of those.
And multi-track, Fostex multi-track cassette recorder.
Yeah, mine was Tascam,
Okay.
so I don't know if Fostex.
Oh, yeah.
I remember them as well, but I don't know if one was an upgrade or a downgrade or basically all the same.
All the same, yeah. As they were trying to figure out technology
Yeah.
to help us out.
But it was neat that you could take this like consumer cassette player and put 4 tracks on it. And I mean, as long as you knew how to bounce from one track to another, take all the material on 3 tracks, move it onto one. I mean, if you were really creative with it, you could do some really interesting, much more than 4-track material.
And that's what I had to do. I mean, the Beatles did that in the 60s.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
they set the stage
as technology grows, and all that. But yeah, that's what I did. And so I just started writing a bunch of songs. And then I had a studio from a past band, and I set my keyboards up, and I had my drums there, and I'd write at home, and then about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I'd go to the studio, set it all up, and I'd start playing to the stuff. And I worked out all these songs where I'd do all the rhythm, all the lead parts, all the digital bass, the keyboard bass.
Yep.
And when I would do it, I'd always lay down a click track, because I played to a click track, because progressive rock has a lot of time changes.
Oh, tons, yeah.
And
it's like a minefield.
Yeah.
Like sometimes listening to it, you know, and you never really know which direction it's going to go. It's like it's symphonic. It
very
really
symphonic.
kind of reminds me of like a classical music piece.
Yeah.
But much heavier, much harder, with an edge. And you just don't really know where it's going to go, where those time signatures are going to go, which gives me immense respect for anyone who's capable of following along with that and doing all the mental math and gymnastics that's required to keep up
for me,
with it.
prog rock is a drummer's dream.
Yeah,
Because you
sure.
get to play around. And I was in a lot of bands where guitar players hated me. I played around too much. You know, it's just like, okay,
You aren't just playing a straight beat.
No, I want to be in
You're
a
like,
progressive
no,
rock
I want
band.
to have fun too.
Yeah. So once I figured out how to do it, I never looked back.
Yeah.
And I just kept doing it and kept writing songs and so forth. And, trying to find band members that could play it.
Yeah.
And Cairo actually was formed by me. You know, I had all the songs and all that. And I was always doing videos. That's how I made money.
Mm-hmm.
So I was doing some videos for a record company. And I did some instructional videos. I did an instructional video with Dean Castronovo, who is the drummer of Journey.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it was called High Performance Drumming. And that was through Shrapnel Records, Mike Varney Shrapnel Records. And then it was distributed through DCI in New York. And, did really good.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did another one for a guitar player by the name of Tony McAlpine, again through Shrapnel Records. And Shrapnel Records is huge. Mike Varney found all the best guitar players in the world. So, really great at doing that. Anyway.
And at this point, they're recognizing, like the people that you're working with, they're recognizing the level and the ability that you have on the drums as well, right? Like,
Well,
these are
they
amazing.
did. They did. Absolutely. Because, hey, I'm working with a record company, I'm doing some videos. Hey, I'm a musician too. You got to
Yeah.
check this stuff out.
Yeah.
And so he did, and he thought it was good. And so I just kept doing it. And he says, Mike Varney said, hey, I know a guy that's just getting off tour that's a keyboardist. He's classically trained. I need to introduce him to you. I went, oh, that would be really cool. So that's how Cairo formed. Mike Varney did introduce me to Mark Robertson, who is a classic trained piano player and synth player and the whole thing. He went to the conservatory. He has a 9-foot Grotrian piano, Hammond C3, Hammond B3, Leslie spinning speakers, the whole thing, Mini Moog synthesizers. I mean, the guy's the real deal.
Yeah.
His idol was Keith Emerson,
Yep.
of Emerson, Lake and Palmer, who is one of my favorite prog bands of all time. Just amazing. So when Mike Varney introduced me to Mark Robertson, I brought him over to the studio. I had all my keyboards set up. I started showing him songs. He's like, wow, a drummer can write songs. And so for the first month, I was just showing him my songs in front of my keyboards, and he had his keyboards.
And he was like playing along with it,
He's playing along with it. Then
riffing
finally
with it.
one day he says, Brockman, why don't you go get behind the drums? I think I got it. And then when I got behind the drums, I saw what the guy could really do. And he's
man.
like left hand over here, right hand over here. He's turned himself into two people, and he's just going crazy. I'm just going, oh my God, this guy's the real deal.
Yeah, no kidding.
So then I could just give him anything I wrote. He would go home, take my compositions, and just turn them into little masterpieces. And then we'd work on the parts, and he'd say, I really like this part, but I think this is better as a bridge instead of a chorus, or vice
Sure.
versa. And then we'd work it out, and really easy to work with. And I really appreciated that he gave me the time and patience, being how that he went to the conservatory. I taught myself keyboards and guitar and all that.
Yeah.
I did take drum lessons starting in 4th grade,
Okay.
snare drum and all that. So I can read all the rudimentary snare stuff,
Was that your kind of official introduction as a child to music, or like where did that kind of
Well,
come
the
from?
introduction was my dad. Always had music playing in the house.
Yeah.
And he loved Herb Albert and the Tijuana Brass.
Okay.
And so he had that playing all the time. And he turned me on to the albums, and I would listen to it. And they had so much melody. And my parents were very young when they had me, so they were, they had parties and friends over and stuff. So the music's always playing. Even when I'm sleeping, the music's playing. It was just instilled in my brain.
Mm-hmm.
And, so that's really where it began. And that was, in 3rd, 4th grade. My dad was a Air Force fighter pilot. So he played guitar, and he always had an 8mm movie camera. And so that's what inspired me for music and film, was my dad always had music going, and he had a camera going all the time.
fertile ground for
Yeah.
creativity,
Yeah.
basically. Yeah.
And then what blew my mind in 6th grade is he handed me a stack of Ventures records. And the Ventures are all, they're called surf rock,
Yep.
but it's all
Ventures are
guitar
amazing.
stuff. And they took theme songs like Hawaii Five-0 and they do their version of it, or the song Wipeout, they do their version of it. And, they're very, very popular. And once I heard guitar in 6th grade, I went, oh my gosh, I still wanted to be a drummer, but I wanted to play with guitar players, So Tijuana Brass was gone and guitars were in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, as Ventures, like being the kind of the idol to learn from, that's a pretty great starting point.
Yeah.
They were so creative in their time and such an enjoyable band to listen to. I've always really liked the Ventures. What about technology? Like from a young age, like you have demonstrated over the years your affinity and your ability to understand technology. Working with MIDI isn't the most complicated thing in the world, but it is, especially when you're first exposed to it. It becomes easier the more you work with it. But in the beginning, it's kind of like, what the heck is going on here? So you had to have some sort of exposure or desire to work with technology. Where did that come from?
Yeah, well, it came from when I saw a friend of mine's son had a computer in the living room playing a game, and I said, "What's that?" It was Commodore 64.
That's
That's
that's at the top of my list. Yeah,
and I was like, "Wow,
great!
It's in the house now." And I saw that, and I thought, "This is really cool." So I started seeking out. Again, there was no internet, so you had to get some magazines, and go to a store. And then this really cool invention came out. It was called the Amiga computer.
Oh, so you got in on the Amiga train.
I got in on the Amiga computer.
I always wanted one of those, but I never was able to.
That was where the beginning of technology, and I had to wait and wait and wait till technology was invented, and I went, "Oh, it's invented for me." This is why I had to wait so long, because once I got that Amiga computer and realized what you could do with it, all kinds of video stuff and audio stuff.
Well, I was going to say, the Amiga, if I remember correctly, was really a really good early system to be compatible with things like MIDI and driving things.
Exactly,
and,
right out of the
acting
box.
as the sequencer. That's
right out of the box.
Right out of the box.
4,096 color capability. And then there's
so many colors.
I know. And then there's all kinds of.
You never need any more than 4,000 colors.
Exactly. That's what they thought. And of course, it was all 8-bit. Everything's 8-bit. And, you'd wait for a frame to render. You'd go to lunch.
Yeah.
Come back, and one frame was almost done rendering.
Oh, I can't wait. I guess we leave this going overnight, and we might have 2 seconds worth of video.
The Amiga 1000 came with 1.5 meg of RAM, okay? And when I got another 0.5 megabyte and had 2 megabytes, I was like, wow, this is amazing. And then when I got 7 megabytes, I just thought, that's all I need. Because, the Apollo landed on the moon with 512K.
Exactly.
I've got 7 megabytes,
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, so what were you doing with 7 megabytes? Was that primarily dedicated to your video?
I was processing with third-party hardware that you could hook up to the Amiga computer. I was doing all kinds of really cool video processing. And so I figured out how to shoot videos, and I was shooting on 3/4 inch video at this time. And so you had big 3/4 inch video U-matic tape players, and I was able to run the signal, the video signal, composite video signal, because it wasn't even a component, composite video signal into the box, and you could manipulate the colors, do color cycling, and some pretty primitive effects, but for me it was like, whoa, this is Hollywood, this is amazing.
At the time it was like you had access to those effects, which was better than most. So
here I am with the kid on the block. I had the 3-tube Satacom tube camera, I had the Amiga computer, I had a 3/4 inch video editing system, and I started making music videos. And I became the go-to person for making music videos in the Bay Area, videos that people could afford, because the only other way to do it, like MTV and stuff like that, is to shoot it in film, and that was way too expensive. So I figured out how to do it for people on video, and got a lot of work that way, and actually made quite a few videos that made it on MTV, and who knows where they went. And I posted some on the website. And they're fun to watch, they're fun to watch.
So where we are right now, this is you're out of school at this point, right? This is your film company. I think it's Film Effects.
Yeah, started that. Yeah.
And you started this film company based on the time and experience that you had while you were younger.
Yeah.
learning about music, learning about film, or video through the equipment that you had at home. Now you've turned it into a business, and you're creating music videos for MTV. Like that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, pretty amazing.
Like
they didn't all go to MTV, but
Right.
some did.
They all had aspirations too.
Yeah, exactly.
That was at the top of the list at the time.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And it was really cool, man. And so I had a couple things. And by the way, I had 2 experiences myself with MTV. One was they had the MTV basement tapes. Yeah, there's one of them right there. And by the way, that was shot in the Phoenix Theater in Petaluma.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. So, and that the Phoenix is great. And you can see some of the effects right there. There's the Amiga 1000. Those are effects that were just done in it.
The little jittery thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And any of the colorizing and...
I mean,
yeah.
So many videos of this, I would say, of these genres and this era looked like this is very much part of the time.
Yeah, exactly.
So even if it was video, like everything was moving towards video.
Yeah.
Video was not as sharp or as pristine as film. Film always had this kind of like premium kind of feel to it because we were so conditioned around film being something you'd see in a movie theater or whatever. So video came along, it had this kind of sharp edge to it, but everybody was doing it. Was the lower cost option, and it was just more accessible, and it had its own aesthetic. And you were like firmly in on that aesthetic. So you were doing what was ripe on MTV at the time.
I was very aware of the film look because I shot in film prior to video, and it has a very unique, distinct look. So video was shocking. So it was really great to use the effects because it looked more filmic.
Yeah,
when you're using the effects, and there's the Amiga effects right there. That's perfect right there. And those, so there they are running through the thing, and people wanted that. They wanted that. Yes. They requested it.
Because that's the future, man.
Yeah, and they wanted the real thick haze and smoke, and they wanted those effects. And yeah, that is the future. And wow, you've got it. Can you make me a video? I'm like, you bet. So I just made all these videos for people, and they'd end up on MTV. And
that's awesome.
Ironically enough, MTV had a couple contests. I entered the MTV contest. One of the contests was the MTV basement tapes. I entered it with a band I had at the time called the Jeff Brockman Project. And it got in there, but in their letter that they sent back to us, we fared well. So that was it. Thank you for entering the contest. You fared well.
You fared
But,
well.
at least we got it on the letterhead, and we got it on the show and the whole thing like that.
So it was on the show.
Yeah, it was on.
So it wasn't
an
just
episode.
like we thought you were neat, but you didn't quite make it.
It was on an episode, but
Okay.
it didn't go anywhere. It came down to voters and stuff. And again, there was no iPhone, so you could tell all your your friends to vote for you.
Right.
We went to one high school and said, "Hey, everybody, vote for us."
Yeah.
But it was an international show, so one high school didn't cut it.
So how many bands were you doing at this time? Because the Jeff Brockman Project, what were the bands leading up to Cairo?
Well, my first band was when I was 12 years old, and that was the Purple Flame. And I was living in Japan. We moved to Japan. My dad was in the military. Then he flew for World Airways. So we lived over in Japan for 4 years. My first band at age 12 was the Purple Flame. Mm-hmm. And everybody in Japan was a musician because we all lived on an Air Force base, and, the kids needed something to do. So they had hobby centers, and we played music.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that band was Purple Flame. When I came back to the States, going to high school,
Purple Flame flamed out.
Flamed out.
Move away.
Yeah,
okay.
the flame dimmed out.
The flame dimmed.
But I met a really awesome guitar player, and we formed a band that was called Nitro. And there is a famous band called Nitro, but we were the original and the first Nitro.
Okay.
And we played all over the Bay Area and all the famous Bay Area clubs, Mabuhay Gardens, Keystone Berkeley, the Stone San Francisco.
Opening for other bands, or
we did open
setting?
For other bands, a lot of other bands. We didn't open for any famous bands at that time, a bunch of punk bands and things like that.
Yeah.
But the same guitar player and I formed another band after Nitro called Tourist. And Tourist, again, played all around the Bay Area, but we did open for Metallica at the San Francisco Stone, and that was really an awesome show.
What era? What?
That was when Metallica wasn't headlining. So we were the opening act, they were the middle act, and a band called Raven was the headliner.
Okay. All right.
And it's really cool because you can go to the Metallica archive and you can see the ticket for that show on their website.
So cool.
Yeah, so it's really cool.
So it's probably like early, Kill 'Em All era.
Yeah,
or
part
maybe
of their
even
history.
before that. Maybe even before that.
Yeah, maybe even before that. It might have even been a historical night for them, because I think the next morning is the morning they kicked a certain guitar player out of the band.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because
All
I
right.
think we played the last show with that guitar player.
Oh, wow.
But I don't want to write history. It wrote itself, and I don't want to misrepresent what may have happened.
Dave Mustaine.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'll say it if you want. Dave Mustaine. Okay. Anyways, we'll see. The history will stand the test of time on that one. But that's an interesting nugget.
The other
I appreciate knowing that.
venture that I had with MTV was MTV had another contest, and this one was open to producers and directors because I mentioned there was 2 contests. And so I entered some videos that I shot for some of these bands that you saw, and I had 2 of them in the top 10, and I won an all expense paid trip to the MTV Video Awards in 1989 in Los Angeles, California at Universal Studios.
And you turned it down. No, I'm just kidding.
That was when Paula Abdul was big then, and she won an award there. And Axl Rose was there with his whole entourage walking through the crowd
prime
with
Axl
20.
Rose era.
20 people following him, doing anything he wants, you know. And I was just all, wow, how did I get here? This is amazing. I can't believe it.
That is so
and
cool.
It was unbelievably cool. And I have the program. It's in mint condition in plastic. And I did go online last night, and I went on eBay, and I said, these things worth any money? And somebody's actually selling one for $179. So
hold on to yours.
Yeah, I'm going to hold on to it.
It's worth way more than $179
But anyway,
to you.
That was really cool. And one of the videos that was in there, slightly before Joe Satriani became really big, he was playing guitar in one of these videos on the track with the guy that hired him to do it at the time that I made the video for. So that was pretty cool. Anyway, that was my second experience with MTV. So, and I actually, got in there. So it was great.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Not many people have the opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
That's an amazing life experience to be able to do. Between music and film, like where do your, like at your heart, at your core, like it really sounds like your life, and we're going to talk about Cairo next, but it really sounds like your life dances on both sides.
I'm really glad you asked me that question because people have asked me that many times. And my answer is, and this is my standard answer, I look at both of them as the same thing. I never separated film and sound. I put them together, and I look at it as today I'm doing film, tomorrow I'm going to do the sound for it.
Right.
Today I'm doing the sound, tomorrow I'm going to do the film for it.
It's like one feeds the other.
Yeah, and so I just looked at it as this is what I do, film and sound, So I never separated the two, and that was the magic of what I've been able to do this whole time. Now, it's really hard to make money in the music business, extremely hard, because when you get a record deal and stuff, everybody's seen the movie yesterday.
Yeah.
There's a classic
I
line
saw that recently. I loved it.
Yeah, there's a classic line in the movie where the record producer's saying, hey, you make the music and we take all the money.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what
basically
happens.
what it is. Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah,
right,
I never
so one feeds
separated
the
the
other.
two. I looked at them the same. But music, I did make some money from music, okay, but I made a lot more as a filmmaker and a director and a producer. And so that's how I've always made my money. And that's why I just stuck with filmmaking and producing videos and editing and 3D animation and stuff like that. And I always kept the music going. So I, do music every day and I do video every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one maybe enables the other.
Yeah, it does,
and it sounds like you're
enhances
passionate
the
about
other.
both. So yeah,
they
absolutely.
go hand in hand.
Yeah,
yeah. So I never separate them. So I'm glad you asked me that because I just embrace them both.
Yeah,
and whatever I'm doing today is what I'm doing. I'm doing video or I'm doing sound.
Well, it shows how much of your being and your humanity is built around your passion of creativity. And I identify deeply with that. Okay, so Cairo.
Yes.
At some point along the way, after all these bands and all this film work and everything, are you just writing because you're primarily the songwriter for these songs?
All three albums.
All three albums.
I was the main writer, but I cannot take any credit away from the musicians that play and perform on the albums. But the guitar player said, "Look, I don't want to do any writing. I've written in other bands. I just want to be the player." The bass player, I just want to be the player. Our singer wrote all the lyrics, but he didn't want to write any of the music. So it worked out great for me.
Yeah.
But the keyboard player, Mark Robertson, the guy's a genius.
Right.
In fact, his idol was Keith Emerson. And I know I'm jumping ahead a bit, but I just want to say that after our first album came out, Keith Emerson discovered Cairo and his favorite band became Cairo. And he even calls out the song in Keyboard Magazine. They asked him, who are you listening to these days? And he said, I discovered a great prog band called Cairo. Oh, really? Yeah, they have this amazing 23-minute song, Ruins at Avalon's Gate. And, I saw that in the Keyboard Magazine. I took it to Mark. I said, look, he goes, what? Oh, my God, he lost his mind because he grew up idolizing Keith Emerson. Now Keith Emerson is calling Mark out and even names the song.
What an opportunity, what an experience to have your truest idol, the person that you idolize be the one to say, oh, actually,
unbelievable.
You're amazing.
And we love Keith Emerson. And the 23-minute song, when Keith passed away a couple of years ago, I did a one-take 23-minute performance on the drums with the music. I remixed the music and then played live drums to it. And that is on my YouTube channel. Mm-hmm. The whole 23-minute thing, one take. I used 3 or 4 cameras with that. And so I labeled it Inspired by Keith Emerson. Mm-hmm. And so it's on my YouTube channel, Inspired by Keith Emerson, 23-minute prog song, Ruins at Avalon's Gate. There it is. Anybody can find that.
23 minutes.
So if you type my name in Google, you'll be able to find this incredible 23-minute progressive rock song, which is very Emerson, Lake and Palmer-like, because that's who it was inspired by.
Yeah.
And, I came up with the basic tracks for this, but again, once I handed it to Mark Robertson, this was his baby. So this really, really shows it off. Oh, and by the way, this is our 3-minute intro.
Well, when you're playing a 23-minute song,
exactly.
It makes sense that you have some sort of a longer build-up to get right into it.
Yeah.
And it goes in different directions and movements throughout the song. I mean, prog rock is so interesting to me.
Yeah.
Just from the perspective of complexity and everything, which makes me it. Yes, you found musicians who were capable of playing. You also found musicians who were capable of learning the twists and the weaves that you had created. It's one thing for you as the songwriter to know this really well because you created it. It's another thing, I feel like, for someone to come in and be like, all right, I've got to learn this as if it's my own and give it my own take and go from there. How much time is spent on rehearsal in that scenario in order to get there? Are you working for weeks, months on end before you ever hit the road on tour?
Yeah, definitely we do. However, the musicians that were in Cairo understood progressive rock music because they listened to all the great progressive rock bands as well. Genesis, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Pink Floyd. So they understood it. So they understand the odd time signatures and the...
okay.
Yeah.
That
and
makes
so
sense.
when you hand the progressive rock musicians the music, that's their language.
Yeah.
So they understood. So it was actually easier than I thought. And again, Mark Robertson, the keyboardist, he's just a natural at doing it. And he really embellished all my music. I have to give him credit for that. Just an amazing player. So he understood it.
Yeah, and he gets a lot of credit, even just poking around the internet and kind of catching reviews and everything like that. Everyone has something to say about his performance on the keys. I mean, the keys are just
off the scale.
Off the scale.
Yeah. He's like Keith Emerson. He's like one of those guys that just does it.
Yeah.
And it's really cool because he has all the vintage synthesizers as well as the modern ones too. Mm-hmm. So he can get all those vintage sounds with the Mini Moog and the Yamaha CS80 and all these vintage keyboards. And again, we had the Hammond C3 and B3 with the Leslies. And Leslies are spinning speakers.
Yep.
And they whop, 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 and so it's pretty cool.
Yeah. And then so when you're touring and performing live and everything, what was the complexity there? Because I mean, just on keyboard alone, you're talking about towers and towers of machines surrounding you. Your set doesn't look like a small set.
No,
let's say
no, it's not. No, I have the full-on prog rock set. Cairo was more of a studio band. Okay, so we didn't do touring. Okay, we were always in the studio rehearsing and recording, and we did some video work and stuff, but we're always recording. The record company also had us play on a lot of tribute records. So we played on the tribute to Rush, the tribute to Emerson, Lake and Palmer, the tribute to Genesis, the tribute to Pink Floyd. And they hired a bunch of other bands to play on those tributes to cross-promote the bands that were on the record label, which was Magna Carta, by the way, the record label. Mm-hmm. So not only were we playing with other Magna Carta artists, but they also pulled in the artists from these great prog rock bands. So really great musicians also were playing on these tribute albums as well. So we did a lot of recording and a lot of side album projects. And there was a real community with the record label and the other bands. And we worked together and we talked on the phone together and we talked about technology together. Like, hey, how are you utilizing the ADATs? And are you like delaying tracks and stuff? Oh yeah, I'm doing this. And we'd share that technology over the phone and stuff. So it was really a community of progressive rock musicians on a record label with international distribution. It was like so exciting for all of us because we were on the second phase of progressive rock. Progressive rock came out in the 60s and 70s, and when we came out in the 90s with it, it was the second phase of it. And the record label Magna Carta at the time was, they were going to be the #1 prog rock label, and they went after it, and they got really great distribution. That was one thing. We got the real distribution through Sony and Warner Music Group and Red and Apollon Records in Japan and Roadrunner Records in Europe and so
I remember.
It's on every continent. They got them everywhere. I could walk. You were mentioning earlier. I could walk into any Tower Records and find our CDs, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I'm in C. Look at this. Cairo. Wow. I could go to any store and find it. I mean, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
It was like awesome. A dream come true. Seriously.
That's really great.
I mean, seriously, I'm a little sensitive to things. The night that we were going to sign our record contract, I was filling up my van at the time with gas, and the gas station had a big old American flag flying, and I went, oh my gosh, this is my American dream. I'm on my way to sign a record contract. I worked my whole life for this. I cannot believe it. It was really an exciting moment. Okay. But I remember seeing that flag and just going, you can really do...
This means something right here.
Yeah,
yes.
you can really do whatever you want.
If I can do it, anyone can do it.
Yeah, right here in the United States. So it was really cool. Man. It was a moment.
So as a musician, as a fellow musician, I would say, like, I understand the drive to, like, have that opportunity, to find that moment. When you finally got there... And, after all these years and finally Cairo's got this distribution and you're kind of part of, let's say, the machine, for lack of a better term.
Yes.
Were you happy with what you found? Were you disappointed? Or were there things that cogs in the wheel that kind of soured any sort of your perspective on finally making it there? You know what I mean? Like, you finally make it there. Does it live up to your expectations?
Well, there were many opportunities to tour. And the foreign distributors were willing to put in money for touring, but our record company wasn't. They wanted us to do it. And we're like...
They wanted you to foot the bill.
You want us to go into debt. We're like, we can't do that. Why don't you just match what the foreign distributors are giving you? No, let's do another record. So
they just wanted more.
Yeah, and
look,
we're not 19 and 20 at this time, so we can't go out and do it on our own in a little van. It just didn't make sense.
Yeah.
So we decided to be a studio band and just record studio albums. And we always wanted to go on tour. And we had a few opportunities where we could go on tour and use the equipment that was at the venue. We're like, we can't do that. We got to use our own equipment. That's not going to work. Okay, so we turned that down a couple times.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, understandably.
You guys don't understand. We have a lot of gear.
Yes, we're not just like
our 9-foot Grotrian piano
punk rock band or something.
Going to be easy to move.
Absolutely. So then you spend a lot of time in recording studios. I know that your first album was recorded in your own studio. Right?
All of them.
All of them.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
We
I
had
read
options.
somewhere
We had options.
Okay.
The record company would give us money to go to a professional recording studio with
Would
engineers.
that come out of your own bottom line?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they would. We always had money to do the albums. So we always had the upfront money to do it because when you're signed, they're going to pay for stuff.
Yeah.
So that's one of
the album.
One of the premiums. It's great.
Yeah.
Wow, we're on a real record label. They're paying for it. So we had the option to go to a recording studio, but all of us are engineers and musicians, and this new digital technology is coming on board, the ADATs.
Yep.
And so we said, hey, can we record our own? Can you give us the money and we buy equipment? And they went, yeah, that's an option. And so we did that. And so we invested into ADATs and mixing boards, Mackie mixing boards and outboard gear and a bunch of stuff. And so that's how the first album was done, actually on 2 Mackie 1604 mixing boards with 3 ADATs, 3 blackface ADATs, which were 16-bit 48K at the time. So that's how we did the first album. We mixed the first album 3 times because we were learning how to mix like a professional record. And we
Sure.
took it to the mastering studio, and they would master, and we go, oh, this is what mastering is. And it would reshape the sound of your
Yes,
record.
it totally does.
We're
yeah.
like, whoa. So then we went back and mixed it again, take it
we
to
like the
mastering, and
bass.
it's like, now the bass is too loud.
Yep.
So then we went back to the studio, and the record
it's-
company's going, no, we're not doing it a third time. We're going, oh yeah, we are. This is our first record. It's gonna come out right. And so they said, okay, go ahead. And we got it right, on the third try.
And I mean, yes, it's digital, but it's
Yeah.
not digital in the sense of today where it's like full recall of automation and blah, 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 right? Like,
Not on the first record.
On the first record, you're not
it was
talking automation. So going back and remixing it was not just pulling up the previous
hands
mix
on the
and
board.
making tweaks.
Six
It
hands on the
was-
board. So I was running a section, the guitar player was running a section, the keyboard player was running a section, and we would talk in advance all the fader moves that we're going to do. And so we'd let the tape
It's a
run.
performance of its own.
It's a performance of its own.
Absolutely.
And we'd practice. We'd practice while the tape's playing. We'd get our little moves down, and then we go, okay, let's do this. And we'd mix it down. We'd do our little moves. So it was hand automation.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's how we did it, and it was great.
Right.
I mean, it was great. We were having a blast. It was, oh my gosh, we were having so much fun.
And when
It
you
was incredible.
finally get it, such an accomplishment, right?
Well, third time's
when
a
you
charm.
know you hit the end of that with all of you coordinating with each other, and I have to imagine you finished that final mix, and you're just like, relief.
Yes, it was
but
major relief.
Also, like total joy.
I think I
like,
slept for
we
2
did it.
days because
I'm
we
sure.
didn't sleep for 2 weeks when we were doing it. It was just like we were just in there. I remember a couple 6 in the morning. We're just punch drunk,
Yeah.
and we're just like, oh my God, we got to get this done because we're being pressured now. by the
Yeah,
record label
right.
And stuff,
Well, and how does that affect your creativity? Because I've definitely noticed this in my own life when there is either financial or responsibility, whatever, interlaced in like this layer of pressure on my creativity. I need this by this date. Be creative and give me something by this date. It kind of zaps my creativity a little bit. It slows me down. It distracts me. Did that play a role for you?
A little bit. We knew what we wanted to do, and we knew that we didn't want them to manipulate us.
Got it. Okay.
And so we
had the
pretty
right
much stuck to
mentality
our
then.
guns. I mean, we
Yeah.
let them yell at us, but hey,
We've got
you've
the
already
music
given
that
us
you
the
want.
money, and we've
Yeah,
already made
got
a
the
record.
music that you want.
Yeah, and they were extremely happy with it. They were extremely happy, and it took off. It took off. I mean, once it got out there, all of a sudden we were in all the foreign magazines. We were in all the Asian magazines. We were in a U.S. magazine. It was all over the radio. We were just like, what? We were doing interviews at 2 a.m, 4 a.m, 6 a.m. with, in UK, Germany, Italy.
Fanzines, that sort of stuff?
Yeah, just, it was unbelievable. I mean, when it took off. And then we're charting with like Van Halen, and we're charting with Yes, and we're charting with all these bands.
Yeah.
And Jimmy Page, Robert Plant. We're charting with them. We're just like, oh my gosh, we had a #1 song in Japan. We had a number 10 song in Japan. The 23-minute song was a number 10 song hit in Japan at one time. It was in a playlist.
Yeah,
I'm like,
the Japanese market is so
they
different,
love
isn't
it. They love it. And I've got stories about that too. I've got stories about every continent and how embracing the fans are, even to this day. And I know I'm jumping ahead, but I mean, the prog rock community on a global sense
Yeah.
is unbelievable. They're very intellectual. They're very deep. The prog rock fans that write you letters, before the internet, they physically wrote us letters to our P.O. box. And you'd get piles and piles of letters that are just page after page after page. And I've got them all. It's just amazing. And they'd send you pictures, and they'd send you coffee mugs. And they send all kinds of stuff, memorabilia from their hometown.
Yeah.
And they want to share stuff with you because, you're sharing
You
their music.
shared-
And
you shared yourself with them.
And that was really mind-blowing, the fan community. And then, that was slightly before the internet. And then the second album came out. The second album came out in 1998. So the internet was kicking by then.
Yeah.
It was just coming on.
But there was a lot of like uncertainty as far as like what the role that the internet was playing with
Completely.
music. I mean, if you're talking 98, that's right about the time that Napster started coming
It was.
coming onto the
And
scene.
we were on Napster. And
Okay,
people
well,
were
of
taking
course.
our music.
Of course.
You
How did
know?
you feel at the time? about
I
that?
felt like people were still in our music.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there was no download at the time. There was Napster, but there was no 99-cent Apple download or anything like that. We're selling
the industry
CDs.
had not caught up with the demand of the technology.
And even in Korea, they even printed the albums. So, I mean, they're still selling albums, cassettes, and CDs of the music at this time. We wanted the CDs, but they printed cassettes and, CDs and some albums. But, again, Metallica came to the rescue with Lars going against Napster. And, from that point on, changed the rules, and the rules kept changing and stuff. So, we were disappointed that people were still in it, especially when we found every single one of our songs at that time. We hadn't done 3 albums or the tributes at that time.
Right.
But the first 2 records, we found all of our stuff on Napster, free download.
And that's just because everything was on Napster.
Yeah,
I mean, you could find pretty much anything on Napster. It was just a symptom of the fact that the music industry was slow to recognize that it needed to do something about offering its music online. People filled the gap, for better or for worse. It created where we are now. How do you feel about where we are now as far as streaming being so dominant? It's not a buying culture as much as it is a subscription culture now around music. Like, how does that strike you?
I've fully embraced it and absolutely love it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's so accessible, and you can just make stuff right now and put it out there.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. I love
Anybody
it.
can.
I love it. Look, it's okay that the record company took all our money. I forgive them. I got something out of it, man. I got this worldwide community.
Yeah.
I got all these people that still to this day, this week, email me and comment and collaborate and stuff. So I've embraced it, and it's really awesome. I love where it is. I mean, to be able to stream 4K video out of your house or 1080p out of your house with super good 24-bit audio at 30 frames a second or 60 frames a second, or the film look 24 frames a second in real time. Are you kidding me? It's a dream.
Yeah,
that is a dream.
It's pretty crazy. The level of democratization around creativity online is unbelievable, and it's something that I've really, on a personal level, enjoyed from about the early 2000s, late 90s actually. Just the ability for anyone to be able to go online and be creative, be it music with the music tools that we have, be it video. I mean, everything has moved. Things that used to require so much money and a team of people are now accessible to anyone.
It's unbelievable.
And you can create an album, you can create a movie, and you really don't need a whole lot to do it. Now we've got our phones, we can even do it with that.
Yeah, and I do.
Yeah,
right out of the house.
Yeah,
albums, videos, whatever. It's great. So again, embracing technology. Embracing technology and loving it and going with it. I was a little slow. I held on to my cassettes for a long time, when that technology started coming along. So I didn't jump right onto CDs. But once I did, I was like, oh, CDs are awesome.
Right.
So everything takes a while to embrace.
There's
but
a
once you
comfort
start
level.
embracing
You got to get comfortable with it and truly understand it. Post Cairo. So Cairo, I guess talk about how Cairo kind of winds down, because I know that the singer, something happened with the singer. Like, what happened there?
Well, it wound down before something happened with the singer.
Okay.
In 2001, we were going to do 4 albums, but we just couldn't get our money from the record label. So here it is, the 3rd album. And every time you do an album, right, when you start to make money, they roll that money into the next album. They would say, yeah, you're making some money, but it's time to do another album. We're going to advance you some more money, and we're going to roll the money over into the next album.
Yeah.
And then once that album starts selling and we catch up again, then we'll pay you. We're like, okay, we'll do another album. And they advance us the money. We're in our own studio. We're having a blast. We're making a new album. Believing what they're going to say. We're going to make money someday.
Yeah.
So by the time the 3rd album comes out, and it's again really popular and it's worldwide, you can find it anywhere. Okay. There's no money. There's and it's everywhere. And we're seeing sound scans of selling thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of albums, and we're in all the magazines. We're charting. We're getting dozens of comments and dozens of emails and dozens of letters, and we're doing magazine interviews, and our stuff is charting and all that kind of stuff. And there's just
still
no
not
money.
Enough.
Yeah.
Still not enough.
There's just no money, So it makes it really hard to survive.
Yeah.
Which is why I always had filmmaking going. So we hired an attorney, a really good attorney by the name of Glenn Miskell, who was known at the time for suing record labels that didn't pay musicians. In fact, Ainsley Dunbar was the first drummer in Journey, and he was replaced by Steve Smith, and Journey didn't, according to what I heard, didn't pay Ainsley all his royalties, and so Glenn Miskell went after Journey and then won the case, and got Ainsley his money and all that. And we thought, yeah, that's the guy we want. So he got it. Well, first of all, when he discovered how hidden the money was and how many distributors there were, he was like, this needs to be a class action suit. Let's get all the bands together. And so he started calling some bands. And then the paper trail started, with all the distributors and stuff. And he realized what a mess it was. He was like, oh my gosh. And by that time, he'd run up a $20,000 bill with us. And then he comes to us, he says, well, there's too many distributors. It's too hard to find your money. They're really crafty on what they did. You owe me $20,000. We're going to call it even. I can't find your money for you. It's too distributed. It's too hidden. They're very crafty on what they're doing. And so he said, we're just going to call it even. But what I will do is I can write you a contract to get out of your fourth option. And I'll get a hold of the record label and see if they're willing to do that. So we said, yeah, let's do that. Because if you can't get our money for us, we're not going to, why would we do another album with these guys?
Yeah, totally.
So, but it's the same story that every band tells on VH1. It's the same story. Yeah. So, we're kind of aware of it.
Because it's how the industry operates.
And we didn't get pissed off.
Yeah.
We're just like, hey, our music is out there. We embrace it. And especially me, I embrace it. I'm happy that I got a record deal. Are you kidding me? It was a lifelong dream. So I'm really happy the music's out there. So he did. He got us out of our fourth option. And about that time was when I created Virtual Live Show, which we're going to get into in a minute.
Let's get right into that.
Moving forward, as we were writing new material, because we were definitely going to put out another Cairo album and stuff, our singer got really sick with pancreatic cancer in 2012. And bless his heart, he passed away. So,
wow, that must have been a really hard moment, right?
It was extremely hard. At one time, the record label called me at 3 a.m. and said, do you realize you have the best progressive rock singer in the world right now? Because we're in all these magazines and we got all this airplay going on every continent. And, and people were really responding in such a positive 5-star way. The record label, when you're their pet, you're their pet. And they'll call you at 3 a.m. and they'll take you to dinner and everything's cool. Yep. And so, Brett was unbelievably talented, unbelievably good keyboard player, drummer, guitar player. He had a music degree and just unbelievably talented, perfect pitch. You could give him a song idea. He'd just walk up to the piano and start playing it in the perfect key and start singing. And he had such a great vocal range, which is very apparent on all the Cairo albums.
Absolutely. He's got quite the range.
Yeah, unbelievable range and unbelievably good pitch and tone, So bless his heart, Brett was a great guy. But, so that kind of ended it. For us, there wouldn't really be another Cairo without Brett. Right. However, the fans want us to, every week I get a letter or a comment on a YouTube video, when's there going to be another Cairo album? Some people don't know that Brett has passed away, and the ones that do still want us to go forward. So what I did to move forward was I created something called Virtual Live Show so that I could perform the music of Cairo live. And what I did was I remixed all 3 Cairo albums, and I took the drums out and I remixed them so they sound live.
Because you were the writer of much of this music.
And
you
I was
got
the
masters.
engineer on all 3 albums.
Okay, and you were the engineer, so you've got the masters, so you can do that.
Mark Robertson and I were producers, so I was a co-producer with him, but I was the main engineer on all of the Cairo albums, and I mixed all of them, and I recorded everybody. And that's a huge task. But that's what I did, because I'm the one that's into technology. In fact, I did all of Mark Robertson's MIDI work when he came to the studio. I would hook all this stuff up. I'd make all his keyboards work with his matrix and all that stuff. You know, it's kind of like voodoo. But I was the one that did it. I had all the computers. I had everything. So, again, being at TWiT, a technology company, I was always into technology. So I was the one that was doing all the technology for the band.
Yeah.
So I was the engineer on all the records and even the tribute albums and all that.
So what exactly is the virtual live show? Like this is, and I ask because I know because you showed it to me. You gave me there is a Blu-ray virtual live show. Jeff Brockman presents virtual live show. You gave me this Blu-ray not too long ago, and then one day I was here at work and I was working, after I think All About Android, and I pulled up YouTube or I pulled up Google and did a search for your name, and sure enough, a bunch of these videos I think taken from this and from your studio are up on YouTube, so people can find that. And I was just like, I was blown away from not only your ability on the drums, but how you were able to follow the weaves and all of the changes in direction and tempo and timing. And obviously you wrote this music, so you know it very, very well. But I was just thinking about the technicality that's required to pull something like this off, and I was just really impressed by it. So, what is the technology that's in there, and how did you work that to a point to where you felt comfortable enough to do something like this?
Great
It's very
question.
challenging.
So it was a challenge, and it was something I conceived of doing in 1992. However, I started thinking about it way before that when I saw Todd Rundgren at Winterland. And he came out and he did the Raw album live. It was mind-blowing for me. From that moment on, I said, that's exactly what I want to do visually. You didn't see any amplifiers or any speakers on the stage. It was a stage set with a pyramid, a big sphinx behind him that shot a laser out of the head. It was unbelievable. And so it was all this pyrotechnics and video projection. Well, actually, it was film projection. There was no video at the time, so it was film projection and lighting and all this stuff. And when I saw that, I just knew I wanted to do that. But at this time, when I was 19 and saw that, way before Cairo and all that, it was in my head that someday I want to do that, and it stayed with me. So in 1992, when I had my film company going and we were just starting Cairo and I was doing all the MIDI, I conceived an idea by using 2 3/4-inch tape machines, a JBL Cooper PPS 100 synchronization box, some other hardware devices that I found. And I started doing some mixing and some experimenting with the Amiga computer and the 3/4-inch video machines. And I put on paper, I want to do kind of what Todd did, but I want to do it with modern technology because now it's 10 years in the future. And so I got this system working with these 2 3/4-inch tape machines and the Amiga computer where I could play the video back and I could play the music live with it, and everything was kind of in sync. And I was like, oh, I'm starting to do it. But I couldn't afford any lights. I couldn't afford any film projectors or anything. But in theory, I had it working. So I wrote this article with diagrams on my virtual live show setup, and somehow it got picked up in an electronic musician magazine. And a company in Canada, Richmond Sound Design, a very prestigious company, Richmond Sound Design, saw the article. They called me up, and they literally drove from Canada to my house, and they have their invention, which is a show control invention that they wanted to give me. They thought, you need this. This is what you need. So they gave me this software and some other stuff that could technically run my show, but it required a lot of real expensive equipment. And I said, well, I never heard of this. What does your software and hardware currently run? They said, oh, the Electric Light Parade in Disneyland. I went, oh. Well, that's pretty impressive.
That's important.
And then all these theaters around the world, their technology. So, I thought, okay, well, they give me this technology, and it worked with MIDI. Okay, so I understood that. So I kind of got it working, but again, I couldn't afford any of the lights or any of the other technology to really make it work. So I just kept evolving it on paper, and I'd acquire some gear, and I kept working on it. Well, then, computers got more powerful, and then the ADAT tape machines came in, so I was able to now take our mixes that were done on ADATs, and I was able to take all the drums off them, remix them with a click track, and I always had SMPTE time code on one of the tracks. And so now I could play to the recorded tracks or even our rehearsal tracks of songs, but I could play live drums to it in sync because I have a click track, and so I could stay in sync with all the music. So I started remixing the music so I could play live to it without any musicians there. But I also mixed it in a way called unity gain on the board, so that if the bass player wanted to come in, everything else is at unity gain. I could just mix the pre-recorded bass track, and now drums and bass are playing in the virtual live show. And maybe the guitar player shows up, so I could just mute his tracks, and now bass, guitar, and drums are playing in the virtual live show, and the keyboards are going and everything. So then technology keeps evolving, and I go, hey, I've got another idea. I think maybe I can incorporate some video into this. So I started incorporating video into it, and I started acquiring this gear, and eventually I just started getting this system working. And as computers got more powerful, I was able to start eliminating some of the hardware. So as computers started being able to play video playback, I was able to eliminate the tape machines. But
which is eliminating complexity out of the system.
But the first big breakthrough that I had was I wanted to figure out how to make everything work, and I didn't want to use MIDI. And SMPTE timecode in the film world and audio world is really reliable for running a track and making things happen on with the timecode. So I wanted to find something that I could use timecode with. So I found some software that was just coming into the DJ industry, and the DJs could open it up and use it and use the interface and all that. But it had this in the description of the product, it says, read SMPTE timecode. I went, what? A light control device that reads SMPTE timecode? So I bought the box. It was $300, and I started playing with it, and it was really cool. But I was trying to figure out how can I get this all working. So what I did was I found a DVD player that on the back of it had 5.1 analog audio out. So I found some free 5.1 software, and I learned how to mix in 5.1, and so I mixed my front of house stereo mix that the audience would hear on tracks 1 and 2 in the 5.1. I put the SMPTE timecode on track 3 of the 5.1. I put the click track on 4, and something else on 5, and then I burned it all on a 5.1 DVD, and I put video on it in sync with the music. I put the DVD in the DVD player, took the output of that into the box with the time code, and all of a sudden, everything was in sync with the DVD player. And I went, oh my gosh. I eliminated the 3/4-inch tape machines. I've got the 24-bit audio.
No
I've got the picture on the DVD. I've got the front of house mix. I've got the SMPTE timecode. I got my click track, and the other track was the monitor mix that I'm hearing, or the headphone mix. So now I've got it working on a DVD player with timecode, going into this Vice that was a DMX controller. So DMX controls lighting and pyrotechnics and video projection and all that. And I figured out how to make it work with this little box. So I called the company down in LA, and I said, hey, I figured out something really cool with your hardware and your software. Can I show it to you? And they said, yeah. So I flew down to LA, and I took the whole concept of the DVD player and their software and their hardware, and I showed them my invention, and they went, oh my gosh, nobody ever thought of this. DJs are using this. This is genius. We want to endorse you with our software and our hardware. And I go, oh, cool. Can I meet the guy that invented it? He goes, yeah, Joe Fitzpatrick. And I go and they met him, and he actually was at one time Rush's and Pink Floyd's lighting engineer. So who better to write the software for this incredible lighting program? Right? I just happened to find the guy that used to do Rush and Pink Floyd. Then he wanted to invent something. What he learned about technology on the road. So he invented how to put it in the consumer's hand and be able to control it. And then I brought this thing that could really make it work. And so they endorsed me with the hardware and the software, and then I took it back. And I've been working with it ever since. Well, now I have the whole thing working just on one computer, because computers are so fast now.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And you can play the video back, and you can play the audio back, and the time code, and the time code's triggering the DMX. So so my virtual live show and the dream I want to do is, in order to keep Cairo going, because the fans are so faithful, and every week I'm getting comments on my YouTube videos, and I'm getting personal emails, and there's so much activity still going on that I feel like I owe it to the fans to keep it going. So I created a virtual live show for the fans so that I could perform the music of Cairo, and I could perform it live at my studio or at a venue, or even now at my home studio out of one of our spare bedrooms.
Yeah.
So I've evolved the technology so far that I actually have an invention. I'm in my 7th generation.
So what generation is this? This is not your home.
No, this is at my own personal studio. Okay. And so, and also it has auto camera switching. So
so none of this is edited by you. It's
there's nobody
all
in the
automated.
studio right now but me. Okay, when I went in to do this, nobody's in there. This is all running off my virtual live show technology. The lights are in sync, the music's in sync, and the auto camera switching is happening. All that is pre-programmed. So in this studio here, when I was developing the virtual live show, I would sit in the middle seat with the software and the hardware, and I'd start playing the music and programming what I want to see.
Yeah.
There is a 10-foot video screen behind the drums too, which isn't active right now, but I have the video projection working and everything. So what you're seeing right now, and this is slightly before streaming, okay? But I knew that we were going to get there. So I knew I was slightly ahead of the curve. So I just kept developing the technology. I mean, look at this. This is incredible. There's nobody in the studio. I push one button and all this starts happening. And I'm playing. I'm hearing the music. The cameras are cutting automatically. They can go through a TriCaster. They could be on on whatever, But all of the camera cutting, all of the lighting, the music and everything is pre-programmed into my virtual live show system.
The camera pushing in.
Yeah.
Bit.
Oh, that's a PTZ camera.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just amazing. Like watching this. If you didn't know, watching this, you would think that it required multiple people to be involved.
Yeah, nobody.
But it's just you, like
it's just me
flipping the switch.
Yeah, and I would go in there every day and perfect this. And after I do these hour-long sets where it's perfectly in sync. I mean, this is an 18-minute song right here that I'm playing. Oh, stick spin. Oh my gosh, it's so fun. So,
That's amazing.
This is what drives me right now, the virtual live show. I mean, come on. Kid in a candy store? Are you kidding me?
Pretty awesome. Pretty cool that you can even pull this off.
Yeah.
And then you were just showing us before the show, you've got a home version of this.
Yes.
That you set up because I guess you moved recently.
On this computer. I actually laid down something last night from my home version. Here we go. So this is last night in the house. And I'm using a TD50 electronic drum kit. And you see my virtual live show rack behind me. And you can see some meters going. Now, right here in this version that I laid down last night, I didn't have time to have the cameras cutting and stuff.
Yeah.
But this is a professional 4K video camera, and then I have some Logitech C920s around the room, which I haven't incorporated yet. But I wanted to show you that I have it working in my spare bedroom right now. And so I laid down something last night just to show you. And by the way, the Roland TD50 electronic drums.
I was going to ask, like, as a drummer who obviously knows how to work a full, like, analog drum set, how do you feel about the move to, like, the merge into digital and all that on the drumming side of things?
Acoustic drums are amazing, and they are amazing. But this Roland TD50 drum technology with the mesh heads that feel like real heads is mind-blowing. I could record an album with it.
This in, like, a room
I could record an album with it, and nobody would know that I played it on a electronic kit.
That's crazy that we're at
the samples that you're using come from the best studios in the world. You can dial in unlimited amount of drum kits with unlimited amount of tunings on your tom-toms, snare drums, cymbals. So I've remade my kit. I remade my acoustic kit with the electronic kit. When I close my eyes and play it, and have headphones on, I can't tell if I'm on my acoustic drums or the electronics when I'm hearing
amazing.
it.
That's amazing.
So the technology is amazing.
Even.
So now I'm writing albums with that kit at my home studio, and you saw the keywords there. I'm composing on that.
Yeah.
So I'm just I have 300 songs in the can right now. So I've got plenty of material to do the virtual live show with.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do virtual live show with all of the Cairo records, all the stuff I played on the tribute albums, and I got 300 other songs I'm working on.
Yeah.
So the virtual live show is definitely in my future for being able to perform. And because of the streaming technology out of my studio or out of my home studio or anywhere else, it's totally possible. I mean, it's come full circle at this point.
Yeah.
You know, from from seeing Todd Rundgren, okay, at Winterland, thinking I want to do that someday, getting endorsed by a couple companies with these creative ideas you have, not being able to afford the technology, to being able to afford the technology.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what allowed me to afford the technology was technology itself. When the DJ revolution came on, the lighting manufacturers figured out, hey, there's a DJ revolution. Let's lower the cost of these lights and the hardware and everything. They really made it affordable.
Yeah,
and
no kidding.
all of the DJ lights have DMX ins and outs to make the communication. DMX is the language of lighting technology and stuff for show control.
Right.
So the DMX, the really cheap DJ lights that do all the fancy stuff, have that communication technology. So once they lowered the cost of it, that's how I was able to acquire all the.
There you go. We
technology.
all benefit. That's kind of what I was talking about earlier, this democratization
Yeah.
of all of these tools that used to be so incredibly expensive, so incredibly out of reach.
Yeah.
And now like anybody can get access to them for a lot less money
Yeah.
and just a little bit of time to really kind of get in there and understand the technology and all that.
My goal is to actually make the virtual live show box and make it for sale. And I have a couple companies that are interested in that. Right now, I have the coolest thing on the block. And so I'm using it for myself.
Heck yeah.
You know, it's like, whoa.
As you should.
This is mine, and I'm making it work. It's great.
That's awesome.
You know?
I love that you could come on and talk about all this stuff. We didn't even talk about EMG, but unfortunately, I think that we're pretty close to out of time.
Yeah.
I should just definitely say folks should go online, and if you're interested in watching like crazy levels of musicianship, you worked with EMG for a few years to help build out a studio for them, a music studio. And EMG TV on YouTube is where you can go to find a lot of these videos from just crazy level musicians. And it's worth going through there and checking out kind of the level of musicianship. You built this studio, you created the plans for how the studio was laid out, you created the technology that's driving it, you brought in these people, sat them down. This is like my dream right here. Like when I saw that you did this, I was like, holy cow, this is like my dream is to do this sort of thing.
I was producing videos for another company, and the phone was ringing, and it was a couple guys on the phone and said, hey, you know, your name keeps coming up as a video producer and director, and we want to make videos at our company. Can you come in and teach our staff how to do it? So I went there and realized, oh, they're a music company. So I spent 2 weeks conceiving a plan for them, and I presented it to them, and they went, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And they commissioned me right on the spot to build this amazing studio. And I took it way beyond their expectations. I mean, really quick, if the TD
really
can cut to my laptop. So I conceived it, again, I'm using technology. I'm using Lightwave 3D by NewTek. We use the NewTek TriCaster here. And so this is a NewTek product. So I conceived the studio before I took them the proposal in Lightwave, and this is what I want. Oh, by the way, all of this conceptual design with the bricks and everything, I went to the alley where Twitch used to be, and took all those pictures of the alley where TWiT used to be at the brick house.
Okay.
Because that alley is one of a kind alley.
Yeah.
I mean, you remember that alley?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, I shot music videos in those alleys.
Okay.
So that was the inspiration for the studio. And that's where all these images come from. These are real bricks and real pipes and stuff that I remade in Lightwave. And that was my inspiration, was where the TWiT studio was, really in the alley. And
well,
so
it's got a brick house vibe to it.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
so if you cut back really quick, Anthony, I'll go through this. So there's the conceptual ideas with the 3D program, and there's a final conceptual. And then you'll see the studio right there. So there's the real studio, with all the gear in it, and I stuck to the plans.
I have to say, that's a beautiful studio.
Thank you.
Like, it's a really, really well laid out.
You know, when I pitched the idea to them, they said, no, we just want a little bitty 10 foot by 10 foot stage. I said, what about a balcony? No balcony. I said, you guys, let me show you these plans. And so then they said, okay. And they gave me the money, and they just left me alone for 5 months. And then this is what I created. And then the rest is history, because EMG took off. I mean, there's 100 million views on the YouTube channel.
Yeah.
There's 200 30,000 subscribers. And that was my office for 10 years.
And I mean, look at this shot.
Yeah.
And anyone who's watched, any amount of TWiT content from this studio, from Eastside Studio, would say that that shot right there looks really familiar. The TD desk that Anthony is sitting behind right now, like there's a whole lot of similarities between what you built. It's
amazing. When I saw the picture of the TWiT control room before I started working here, it was almost identical to that control room. And I went, oh my gosh, like mine's.
Yes.
And they had a TriCaster. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, right on. That's anyway, cool. So EMG TV is where people can go on YouTube to find.
So I created that studio, and I operated it, produced, directed, edited, and uploaded every single video there for 10 years.
And you got to be with those musicians.
Every single one of them, produced, notable, directed, and worked with them
and talented
for 10 years, and just amazing people. And look, I love the guys at EMG. And so when I left, I built them a small studio at their corporate office, because that one is no longer there, that big studio. I produced every video in there from day one, and when I left, that video ceased to exist. Mm-hmm. So I built them a little studio at their corporate headquarters, and they continue to do videos once a month in there and stuff. But it's nothing like the big stage and all the fun we had for 10 years with some of the best musicians on the planet, which everybody can go see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's super inspiring. Everything. This is why I wanted to bring you on Triangulation. If anyone could tell, like I love talking with people who are creative, who are passionate about their creativity. And I love hearing you talk about all of these stories about your life, because it's just really inspiring to me on a personal level. So I hope that it is for everyone else.
Well, I do want to let the fans of TWiT know that you recently gave me a copy of your CD.
Oh, please.
And it's still in my car, and I'm loving it. So, I mean, I mean, we hit it off really good. You're a great musician, and I love working with talented musicians and stuff. And I also want to say that my history with TWiT goes way back to Tech TV with Leo Laporte, and I can't believe that he created TWiT, and that I always use TWiT as an example for other people when I would show them a quality streaming YouTube channel or on Twitch or whatever, and I'd say, listen to that audio. It's unbelievable. Little did I know I'd end up working here.
Yeah.
I took the beginning of the year off, and I wrote 3 hours of peaceful, relaxing music, which you can find on YouTube. I got the URL, peaceful, relaxing music. It's almost like Calm. I wrote 3 hours of music, and I made a video to every track. So if you go to youtube.com/peaceful, relaxing music, you can find 3 hours of music that I wrote and made videos to, and I streamed those. I wrote those over the first half of this year, and then I saw an ad pop up for an engineer at TWiT. I said, well, I love TWiT. I'm going to respond to that ad and see what happens. The next day, I get a phone call, and 2 days later, I started working at TWiT as an engineer with technology.
Yeah.
Because I love technology.
Surrounded by it.
Yeah. So, I mean,
we are consumed by it here.
Music, film, and technology, I embrace it all. And I can't believe I'm working with you and Anthony and all these great people that just embrace this technology. And everybody at this company is so amazing. And it's all about technology. And everybody gets along so good. An entertainment company, and everybody's laughing in a good mood. And Leo and Lisa are just so amazing. I mean, I'm waiting for the bubble to pop, because it is unbelievably amazing. And I asked you, how long have you been here? And you're like, I don't know. And we find out it's 10 years.
Yeah.
And you still come in with this smile and this great attitude. And I work with you on these shows, and you're amazing. And
thank you,
and it just, everybody keeps the level so high. I mean, this company is amazing. So I really feel like I belong here, and I feel like everything's for a reason. I've always been into technology. I've always been into film. I've always been into music. I've embraced it. I've invented things to make it work. I have albums out there, and I love all the technology that you guys use. And then I come here and I get to use the technology, the TriCaster and the mixing boards, and the engineering staff, Burke and John. Those guys are geniuses. I really appreciate how they embraced me, and they were very patient with me as I learned their methods and all the way they do stuff here, which I completely understand, but it's their way of doing things. And so I just came in with an empty cup. I let everybody show me how TWiT does it, and I just continue to learn. And that's what it's really about.
Absolutely.
Is never giving up the dream and never stop learning. Very, very important.
Very important. Jeff Brockman, thank you so much, man. This is a lot of fun. I'm really
it's
happy
so
we
much
could
fun.
pull this off. We can make it happen.
Somewhere down the road, we will actually go to the virtual live show studio, and we will do a complete tour of it.
Yeah, that would be amazing. I would love to take a look at that.
And we'll look at all the technology and how it works, and we'll get a performance in and do all that.
Sounds good. We've got it on. We've got it on tape.
So to summarize, and then I'll be quiet. At the end of one of our very popular shows, T&W, you guys always do that. I can't believe I got to do that.
Thank you, Jeff. You make me smile. I'm so happy we could do this. Jeff Brockman. You will undoubtedly hear his name here because he's working behind the scenes, and as you can see now, a little bit in front of the scenes as well. Jeff is a great man, and I'm super happy that you're here.
Thank you very much.
We do Triangulation every Friday. You can go to twit.tv/TRI for Triangulation to find all the details on how to subscribe and check out all the previous interviews that we've done. We've done a whole heck of a lot of interviews here on Triangulation over the many years, so you should definitely go there and check it out. twit.tv/TRI. That is it for this week's episode of Triangulation. Happy New Year, everyone, and we'll see you next time. I'm Jason Howell. Bye.